Hello, I might be a bit late on this one because when I went back into the studio, I saw the date was wrong. It's the 1st of July already. And it rained for nearly all of June here. But not to worry because I had things to do inside. And this is the shrimp live stream, all about shrimp. I said I would do this, didn't I? So I have a little nano aquarium set up, and it took me about 2 months to get my act together for it. And about at least a month of that was discovering how to do it. But I figured out how to do it, looked a lot of things up, have it set up, and have a few shrimp in it now. I've only two shrimp in it because one of them sadly died a few days after arrival. But I will talk about that and many other jollier things in this because I thought it'd be nice to do a live stream for anybody who's ever thought of maybe, wanting an aquarium, a small aquarium, or wanting to keep shrimp, you know, because this isn't necessarily just about shrimp. It could be about nano aquariums, which are like small aquariums. And mine is really small. And there are reasons for that. One of them being that my living space is small and I don't have much space in it. So my aquarium is back here. You can just see a chair and a desk in the corner there, and it's on a shelf behind the desk so that when I'm working or watching videos or enjoying myself or reading something on the internet or, doing anything, um, I can glance at it from time to time and have something nice and relaxing to look at. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to share what I found out about nano aquariums for anybody, as I say, that was interested in the idea of having an aquarium. Now, an aquarium is a big deal. There's so much to know about it. And the way I got into wanting one was I started off. I have loads of stuff to show you today. I'm going to show you all the setup stuff. I have some videos that I'm going to share a few of with you from a playlist that I've created for my aquarium and how I set it up and everything. Because these are the things everybody wants to know when they're setting them up. You can't just get a shrimp or fish or whatever you're getting and just dump them in water and expect them to do okay. It doesn't really work like that. There's a little bit of a setup and a few things you have to know first. So I'm going to give you general guide to things, but this is where I started, and you definitely don't have to start here, but like how an interest in doing something could happen is I started doing these guys. This is a little roundy, fishbowly shaped one, a closed terrarium, and a terrarium is, terra, earth. So it's plants in some sort of a little jar and it's closed terrarium. And I got interested in doing those. And this one actually has ants in it because I'm an ant keeper. And I don't have them at the moment, but I did have isopod terrariums, and isopods are great fun. They're those little things that here we call them wood lice. Some places they call them pill bugs, and they're such fun to watch. And these are closed terrariums where you take the top off every so often and, give them a little bit of food, and then they, get that little bit extra. But it's all closed, little kind of an ecosystem in there, and the plants grow. They have their own way of generating oxygen and everything in there. So that idea was very useful in setting up an aquarium because you're creating a little biosphere, if you like, inside there, a little ecological system that's running itself a little bit. It needs some help from you, but in an aquarium, that idea becomes a thing that they call cycling. And it doesn't mean little shrimp or fish on bikes. It means the nitrogen cycle is what it is referring to. And I will be talking a little bit about why that's so important and the cycling process is so important. But I'll talk about other ways I got there and everything. But I want to show you the latest thing that's happening in my aquarium with my nano aquarium, my tiny aquarium, which is only 20. I'm European, so I'm saying things in centimeters sometimes. When I bought it on that place that's the name of a big river that we all buy cheap stuff from, and it doesn't have that many competitors around. That's how they keep their prices down a bit. But um, I bought a cube aquarium that's 22 by 22 centimeters square, right? Which is somewhere around 10 inches, 12 inches, a foot, slightly less than a foot, I think, square. So it's really, that's at the really tiny end of what you can do with an aquarium. And I can't keep fish in it. It's too small for fish, but it's not too small. It's nearly too small for shrimp, but isn't yet. Oh, and I'll talk about how you how you have to deal with ideas of upsizing and things as well. There's a lot to aquariums that you have to think out, are they for me or not, before you actually go and get one. And it's a good idea to think it through. But let's watch a video to see the latest developments. And I'm going to try and play videos without playing the music, because I don't want to get copyright infringement on shorts. You're allowed to use other people's music, but not on long videos. So let me see, can I get this page playing? I'm over on my playlists on my channel. There's a whole tab for playlists, and one of my playlists is Nano Shrimp Aquarium Setup. And I've set up that playlist so that you can look at it from the oldest video to the newest video, play them all the way through if you're looking to set up a tiny aquarium, right? Because you can follow me, the steps I took, and then you won't feel as lost, because that's what happens. You feel lost when first you get the idea, hey, you know what? I think I'd like an aquarium. Then, even for somebody like me who's done terrariums before, you're kind of, there's still a little bit of leap in knowledge there, and you realize that you're probably going to be coming in at the end where you're going to do something really on a small scale. Because it's a huge commitment, and if things go wrong and everything on a big scale, even if you had the room for it and the resources financially to do it, because there's a bit of money involved. And I'm going to show you all the stuff I had to get for it, all the equipment I had to get, and so you can see how much is involved in terms of spending. So I don't really believe people when they say you can do it for a couple of dollars. Some of the individual bits and bobs you buy for it are cheap, but everything adds up, doesn't it? But just to show you why it's fun, here is, if I open up my playlist, that uh, I want to mute everything on that playlist. Everything has music or voiceover on it, and more often music. So I don't want to get the copyright thing, as I say. But I want to show you the latest video, which is molting, shrimp molting. Now, shrimp have an exoskeleton, and the exoskeleton is it's hard. So that's some of my bladder snails in the aquarium. And they were accidental imports. I have about 11 or 12 of them at the moment, with lots of babies that I have a way to move to somewhere else at the moment that I'm investigating. But they're basically raising Banquo's ghost, I call it there. That's an exoskeleton of one of my two shrimp. There's a Romeo, the male shrimp, and the female shrimp isn't Juliet, but that's the female one there, I think. And the female one is coming into being fertile now. That's her on top of what I call the poop deck. For obvious reasons, she's eating poop there. But this is my aquarium with 3 big rocks in it. I followed a method for the aquascaping called the Amano method, which is named after an aquascaper guy, a Japanese aquascaper guy, who had this idea that if you set up an aquarium with 3 rocks and then landscape around that, that it creates a nice look. And I like it very much because in a small space, you have to have a plan like that for aquascaping. But that is Captain Costarda there, who I'm hoping, sort of hoping, will get pregnant or get buried, they call it, not B-U-R-I-E-D, because the crewmates won't bury her, I don't think, but buried, B-R-R-I-E-D. And the eggs are like little berries in her now see-through tummy. I haven't seen the eggs yet, but you can see on her back a darker yellow patch that is called a saddle. And once the adults get this saddle, they get little eggs, the females, they get little eggs that drop down from that. And then the male shrimp, she releases pheromones, nice smells in the water that drive male shrimp mad. And they go, oh, mating time. And they deliver a little donut-shaped packages that fertilize the female's eggs when they drop down. And that female molting before that process, and seeing the saddle present, told me that this was a female, definitely female, because I wasn't 100% sure of their sex beforehand. And I knew I had a male because he started going around the tank like crazy, trying to impress her. They do a little, almost a dance. They dance all the time anyway. They're funny like that. But he does this little running around the whole tank thing, trying to impress her with how strong and fit he is and how great he'd be to mate with, you see. And once that happened, you know, love is in the air and things might happen and you might get more shrimp. So even though I only have 2 out of the 3 shrimp that I originally got, and I'm only on the 2nd week when they're in the tank now, because the rest of the 2 months was spent setting the tank up for them to live in, because the tank is like a wok pan that you're going to cook with. It has to be kind of seasoned first by doing certain things, including the thing I was talking about, cycling. So we're going to have a look at cycling. So she might be pregnant. So even though I've only 2 little shrimp in it and have room for more, they can have a lot of shrimp. After, you know, if she gets pregnant, she could have 20 little baby shrimps, you know, and that's, I'm really pushing the limit for that tank. So that's something with the nano aquarium you have to think about. Even when I got those shrimp delivered, and I have a little video of all the stuff that I got with the shrimp, but I'm not going to show you that video. You can watch the playlist if you want to see that, because I'm going to show you a lot of stuff here that I got with the shrimp and me unpacking the shrimp and everything like that. So I won't show you that there. But when I got some plants, and these are the sort of leftover bits of the plants that I got, they come with their own sort of passport and everything. This is a hygrophilia, this one. And in these plants, when I was planting them in the aquascape, I didn't know, but there was a little snail, a bladder snail in there. So all aquarists know about stowaway snails, and they can become quite a pest in the tank. So they can reproduce even if there's only one, because whatever way they have it reproduce, and they don't need 2 to do it like shrimp do, you know. So here are my other plants. This is the one that the one shrimp came in on. And that out of that shrimp, I got my whole, what I call stowaway crew. they're the below cabin cleanup crew, and they're very useful in a tank, but they breed exponentially like crazy. And they came in this Hygrophila aragua. Oh no, that's not Hygrophila aragua. That is the other one. I have this is a red one. This is the Ludwigia Mini Super Red, which has its passport as well. All plants coming into the country need a passport. And you're getting healthy plants and everything. So in there was a little snail, and I didn't know it. So that snail went into my tank and reproduced without having a mate to reproduce with. And within a couple of weeks, I had 11 or 12 snails, and then they lay eggs under leaves, little bunches of eggs. You can see some of those. I'll find you one of the videos actually that has those in it. We'll look at a bladder snail video. Get ourselves a nice bladder snail video. We'll look at the Cirque du Snail. I don't know that we can see any of the eggs in this one, but they're little bunches of eggs like see-through grapes all over the place under leaves. And you can get about 40 snails out of each of those as well. So they can become a problem in a tiny little nano aquarium as well, you see. So you need a plan for in the future. What are you going to do with these before you have all the stress of what do I do with all this extra stuff in a tank that doesn't have the capacity for it? So let's see the Cirque du Snail, named because these snails are actually incredibly fun to watch, and they're like doing balancing tricks, and they're very beautiful going up and down the tank. They go up to the surface for air, and they're like weird little angels. There's a shrimp using the snail as an elevator. One of the shrimp discovered that the snail are handy if you're feeling lazy. You can get a lift to the top. There are the eggs, you see. There'd be about 40 in that pack. And it is a circus because the shrimps like to ride on the snails and everything. So no, don't play that one again. We don't want to play that one again. So that's how that deal works. And my plan for the snails is to be able to transfer some of the snails. I have another little, beside the aquarium at the moment, I have another little glass like that with a little bit of plant in it and some dandelion leaf. And I have a brush, a little artist brush, and the little baby snails, when they hatch, I kind of slide them out on the brush and put them into that glass when they've hatched out. And then I transport them. When I have about 20, 30 of them, I transport them out to one of my little outside ponds, because I make these little, that was one of the routes I had into getting a nano aquarium, was experimenting with trying to make little ponds outside my house. And I made them you can make those very cheaply, much cheaper than making an aquarium, because you can use any sort of buckets you have around the place. And all you need really is a little outdoor pond pump, a little small one. If you have a little small pond, you only need a tiny pump. And I got a little solar pump. And I have a pond out there which has a pump in it for frogs. Because I was raising frogs from tadpoles. And I have another pond that's kind of a, keep a few tadpoles in it pond and then transfer them when they get bigger. A bit like this. This was actually my first aquarium that I got, which is far too small to keep any sort of shrimp or anything in. But I kept a couple of tadpoles in there to see when they were going to break out of their little spawn. things and become tadpoles and be able to film them and everything. And then every so often I had a few little tiny baby froglets that I was filming for YouTube videos in there, but it was much too small to keep anything like that in. And I use it now for growing plants that I can use in terrariums and aquariums that are wild plants that I find that I just stick in there and I put water down in the bottom. That is called a paludarium when it's some water and some soil in it, you see. It's a half and half kind of thing. And I even looked into making those as well. But a lot of people on YouTube that have paludariums are keeping exotic animals in them. And there's a lot of work and a lot of expense and a lot of expertise involved. So I said, no, I won't do that. I'll start simply. And I thought of shrimp because it's really weird reason. It's because you know when you're a kid and you want something, when you're an adult, sometimes you indulge yourself, and I'm like that. I don't know about you, but I used to read DC comics when I was a kid, and in the back of DC Comics, they had ads for sea monkeys. And I always wanted sea monkeys as a kid because the ads were great and I could never figure out what exactly they were. And actually, some of the food that I got for my shrimps that I'm going to show you amongst some of the things, supplies you need for them after you get your all important aquarium. I got this, as I said, 22 by 22 cube glass cube aquarium, and glass I think is the best to get because that little tiny one I had here, this is acrylic and it does mist up. It's harder to see through right from the beginning, so you drive yourself mad with those. The You can do things like big fish bowls and things like that. And I might actually, when because it will, the bladder snail population gets completely out of control, and if the shrimp population goes up, which it seems likely it will, I might expand by getting a few fish bowls and things like that. I'll talk more about that later, maybe. But I did want to tell you about the sea monkey idea, that I really wanted sea monkeys and I always wondered what they were. And I kind of thought recently, maybe they're shrimp, and I looked them up again and they're these little guys. These are sadly made into food for shrimp, but they're Artemia or Artemia, and they are a little prawny kind of shrimp-ish thing. They're even smaller than shrimp. And the shrimp I have are Neocaridina shrimp, which are one of the easiest kinds of shrimps to keep for beginners like myself. But these are even smaller than shrimp. So that's what sea monkeys were. But when I looked up keeping them, I went, well, you know what? Maybe I'd enjoy shrimp, maybe, because I already do a little bit of aqua landscaping kind of thing, because some of my terrariums are plants growing out of water. So I was getting a hang of growing plants out of water just with wild plants. I didn't buy plants for that. So I knew I was making a little bit of a leap into buying stuff now, but I really wanted an aquarium. And when I thought, yeah, I can have shrimp, I might like that more than buying sea monkeys, which come with all very plasticky looking kits. It gives you the whole kit, you see. But some of the kit, the thing you actually keep them in, some of them are kind of fun. One is a Mars, sea monkeys on Mars or something like that, which was one I thought, oh yeah, that is fun. I'd like that. But they're very plasticky and I don't really like plasticky things that much. And I thought, it'd be even more fun to do stuff myself and buy a few little shrimp, aquascape something, and learn how to keep shrimp in a nano aquarium. So that was my thoughts, because I knew I couldn't do a big aquarium. I knew somebody that had a big aquarium, and it was like magic to me that he could do this because I knew it involved various weird pumps and things. And I'm going to show you some of that kind of equipment, or at least the boxes of them, because I have my filter and my pump actually in the aquarium at the moment, but I'm going to show you the boxes of things to show you some of the equipment I had to get after buying the basic glass box that you put the water in. So this first thing I want to show you is, if I can find it, the box of the pump. And it has picture, well, it's the filter actually. That is you need a filter, right? And when you find out that you need a filter in your aquarium first, I knew about this because I needed a filter in my outdoors pond. And a filter basically is something that has spongy material like this on it, and it has air being pumped through. And as the air is pumped through, it drags water in through the sponge and circulates it basically in the tank. And it's the same as an outdoor pond. It's that the idea is that you don't get a buildup of too much bad biological material like algae building up too much in your aquarium or your outside pond. And you do this by basically it's by keeping surface water moving, but keeping the water in the tank moving basically. So a pump drags the water in and pumps it out again to circulate in the tank so the water stays moving. And you know yourself, if you have any ponds or anything in your area, still ponds have more algae in them than moving water ponds. So if you have a stream, it's going to have a lot less algae buildup on scummy stuff on the top of it than a pond that's still. So that's an important concept for an aquarium. So in order to do that, you need two things. You need not just a sponge filter, but you also need an air pump. And the air pump is a thing that it's a little roundy thing. It's that kind of shape and that kind of size. The one I got I got one that's the same brand as this and is marked as being a nano size, like this filter is a nano size as well. And so buying getting an air pump that wasn't too strong, wasn't going to pump water at too fast, violent a rate for a little tiny tank was very important. And then getting a filter that was the optimal type of filter and the optimal small size for my small tank was important. So the original filter that I got, in fact, if I can find it, I will, if you'll excuse me for a moment. The original filter I got was a fail because it was very cheap. It was under a tenner, but it made too much noise. And this is the problem with filters. Here's the inside of the old filter, just to show you how they work. I had a stone tied on to keep it on. The air pump comes down. You've got an air line, right? And that will go into that. And then there's a sponge goes around this bit. So the water is getting sucked in through a sponge, which is around it. So that goes, imagine that going inside this sponge. It pulls the water in through that. The sponge acts as a filter to catch bits of anything solid or debris or anything like that. And then the water gets pumped up and you get bubbles going up and recirculating the water around the aquarium. which is lovely and keeps the water lovely and clean, but it makes noise. And this tiny one that I got, which was a great size, made too much noise because it created bubbles that were too big. So a kind of a hack that people do with these tends to be that you buy these. These are air stones. You buy air stones and you put them inside your filter, and there are loads of videos on YouTube how to do this, to get them inside your filter. But every air stone I got was too big for my filter, and I couldn't solve the problem of how to do this to make smaller bubbles coming up. And I had an effect in my Nanoaquarium that is commonly referred to by aquarists as the witch's bubbling brew noise. And it's an unpleasant bubble, bubble, bubble noise, which sometimes sounds like frogs ribbiting, and sometimes just sounds like oil bubbling up or something in your living room. And it's not necessarily a noise that is pleasant to you or nice. And if you're somebody who wants complete silence in your house, think twice about getting an aquarium, because I like it really quiet, and I found it really hard to get my aquarium really quiet. And I'm only now, after a couple of months of having this thing, getting used to noise. And there is that noise all the time. It's not very loud, but it's there, So that's something to take into consideration. There's a little bit of noise in it. How pleasant you can make the sound that noise sound like has to do with what you're using filter wise and air pump wise in the tank. And you don't need much power in an air pump at all for a tiny little aquarium. So you can get fairly quiet aquarium noises, fairly quiet, but not completely silent. You can't hope for completely silent where you have air coming up through water and it's going to do some kind of bubbling on the surface, in whether the bubbles are tiny or big. The air stones really make the bubbles tiny, and air stones can be attached directly to these airlines, this airline tubing that you buy. But usually what happens is the kind of thing that I did, which is you buy things called splitters. And I want to see if I have any in this box here to show you. I have a few different things in a few different boxes. I don't have any handy to hand. Oh, I do. Couple of things you need. These are called splitters, and these split your airline into one airline that goes from your pump to the filter. The filter goes down in the water and starts filtering the water through that, sucking up the water through the sponge straight away and recirculating the water. But another airline, you cut another bit of airline and you attach it to an air stone. And I did it that way. I had an air stone and a filter separately, because in my new filter that I got, which was that kind of size, because this is a spare sponge that came with it, in my new filter, it had filtration stuff already organized inside, and it's specially designed for a nano aquarium, so the bubbles coming up were very small, quiet bubbles and not too disruptive, and wouldn't spoil a shrimp's day or a human's day with the noise, So that was cool. So I had that, and then I had an air stone making tiny little bubbles going to another part of the tank that maybe doesn't receive as much circulation. And the air stone bubbles are very pretty as well. They look very nice in the tank, so people like using them as well. They're a very cheap thing. Airline's very cheap. The filter wasn't hugely expensive. It was around 20 quid for me, which is about the same as American dollars at the moment. Everything I did is at the cheap end of the range, because I'm not a millionaire. The other thing that you need is these valves. You might be wondering what the valves are, but they're called stop valves. They go on your airline as well. And again, you'll see tutorials for how to do that, how to set up your filter in your aquarium. And it'll always say get some stop valves as well. All of these were bought in the same place that's named after the big river online. So they're easy to get and cheap, you know. So they stop the water accidentally if the pump shuts off, your power goes or something, stops the water accidentally backtracking along to into the plugged in air pump and blowing it up, basically. So you won't get any nasty accidents, you know. Um, so that's kind of that was a technical something that I had to kind of look up how to do. And you, when you're looking up these things, you'd be looking up loads of things when you're making an aquarium. And that's just filters and things like that are one of the things that you think, oh, I'll never get the hang of this. And until you do, until you watch a few tutorials and say, oh, okay, my filter works with an air pump attached to it. Gotcha, you know, because I didn't get that at first. And that's okay. We all have to start somewhere. So that goes into the tank and your plants, right? And you might be buying plants, or you might be able to find some plants. So one of the only I have two mosses in my aquarium at the moment. And I'll show you another video. I'll show you some of the plants that I put on the surface as well. But I have really nice moss that I got locally that I have seen in ponds locally that will, it's not really a totally, most mosses that I've seen here don't grow completely underwater, but will grow up towards light. So they can be immersed for a while as long as they get up past the surface. And I have one moss that I didn't think was going to make it, that I made a little cave. I had my three big rocks that I found, picked out. You can buy them online, but you know, went around and made a big thing of going to rivers and things like that and finding rocks. And I found one of my main rocks in my aquascaped aquarium is a 400 million year old piece of sandstone. And that is my main kind of mountain, if you like, in my aquarium. And then I have two other. I have a white quartz, that's a red sandstone. Then I had a white quartz, and I had a third little polished rock that I had bought somewhere ages ago, because I can fit very little in the aquarium. But I had mosses, and the moss that I found locally, I tied it down to the top of a little shrimp cave that I'd made. And if you're keeping shrimp, you need a little cave for them, because they like going in there feeling safe when they're molting and their new shell is soft and vulnerable and everything. And if the female ones are having babies, the babies like hiding in there and the females like hiding in there. So I had made this little cave for them out of little stones and a bit of super glue. And I'd put this moss that I found, which I think was a feather cap moss, on the roof of the shrimp cave. And I leaned it all against the big mountain. And now that moss is growing up towards the surface and looks really pretty. So that was a found one. And then the other one is a moss I picked especially for the look of the aquarium, because of course all the plants in it and everything are important to me, as important to me as the look of the shrimp, right? So I picked out one called a phoenix moss, which to me looks like beautiful Japanese maple trees. And when it takes properly, I'm hoping it'll look like a forest with some mountains coming up out of it. So we'll have a look. Can we see those in a video, some of those plants? I don't have great shots of them, to be honest, but These videos, of course, are more fun going through them with nice music and everything. I like making them because the music is so nice. But I'll get one of the early ones. I'll get one of the early ones. So here's something that went into the top of my aquarium. One of the things is an orchid which was dying at the time, and it is now doing very well on a piece of driftwood branch that I have coming out of the aquarium. But a peace lily is the other thing. So I had a parent plant that was growing already. There's some of my terrariums, and I have taken this one out, cleaned it, and put it in water, and I'm getting it ready to put into the aquarium. So a lot of plants like this can grow on the top of the aquarium, but the root system is helping you to cycle the aquarium, which I'll talk about in a sec. Okay, so there's some of the plants. I don't think you'll see anything in the aquarium in that one. Here's the aquarium. Here's the aquarium itself, and there's the orchid on the top of it, which has come along greatly since then. And I've got a lot more plants in. That was at the start of the aquascaping. So you can see things more advanced than that in the later videos, but that's how it starts, right? Getting there's more plants here. I hope my sound isn't cutting out. Sometimes it does when I run videos. So that's the moss that I used in the tank, I think. Getting it ready. And it just shows how I was growing that. So the other thing that I needed was, and I was buying all this stuff bit by bit. The other thing before I could plant anything in it was substrate, which is the stuff that you put in the bottom of your aquarium to let things grow in. And you can see a picture of what it looks like here. I opted for a fluval. And this is some sort of Japanese, I think it's kind of lava or something, lava rock or something like that. It's black and they're tiny little pea-shaped black rocks. And I picked that because I knew I wanted these little Neocaridina yellow Davide line shrimp. And I thought that the bright yellow and the little black eyes would show up really nicely against a really dark background. So I planned the idea of my tank from the beginning, having to do with not just what would be biologically good in the tank, but how it would look. So I wanted yellow against the black, you see, for the shrimp to show up. So that was my substrate that I put in. And that's kind of semi-active in that it has minerals in it. But you need a lot of minerals for shrimp. And particularly to ensure things like healthy molting. And we saw what a molt, their actual carapace looks like when it comes out. They're forever molting. I think that's how the first one died a few days after I put it in. I think it was trying to molt, and maybe the stress of traveling a long distance and then having to go into a new tank with a plop and drop method, which is a method of introducing them to the tank that doesn't acclimatize them slowly. If you buy shrimp from nearby you, if you have your tank all ready for the shrimp and you've done this cycling thing you have to do, you then buy your shrimp and put them in by acclimatizing them to what you call your parameters in the water, right? And there's a lot of work to get your parameters right. So you plant first, you get your substrate in, you get your plants. You saw some of the plants there that I bought to put in my tank, and a lot of my videos show how how the plants look afterwards. So I have the playlist actually copied in the description of this video if you want to check out the whole playlist, so you can see what order I did things and how the plants turned out and everything. But the plants go into the substrate and into kind of other areas of the tank, including like shrimp caves and things like that. So that the shrimp have lots of lovely little places to swim in and out of and hide and everything, and feel safe and feel like it's a nice environment for them, you know. But you have to get the water right before they go in, and either if they come from somewhere nearby, if you get your shrimp from some supplier nearby and they don't take that long to get to you, or you're bringing them home from a shop or something for, you know, only an hour or something, traveling in a little bag, you can use your drip acclimation method, which involves an airline as well, and dripping water into the bag that they're in, then floating the bag in your aquarium water, and then finally they've got a mix of the aquarium water and the original water that they're in, and then you can release them into the water. Or you do what I had to do. If they take more than 24 hours to get to you, a lot of aquarists say that the water might have an amount of ammonia in it that's going to make the water pretty toxic to them the minute you open the bag. This is if they're traveling a long time, and mine were traveling more than 24 hours. So I had to have a big think about this, look at loads of videos and say, how am I going to do this? And I opted for the plop and drop method, which wouldn't be my first choice, obviously. And, you know, maybe that was why one of the shrimp died a few days later, but the other two are still. So I was really pleased to see them molting well and everything, because that means they're used to their parameters and they're happy in there. So the plop and drop is only for when, and it is what it sounds like. You acclimatize them to the things you can, get the lighting, get them used to your lighting, because, you know, they've been in the dark traveling to you, and get them used to the temperature of the water. And speaking of temperature and lighting, I had to get two other things. One of the things I need for my tank, because I live in Ireland, and even in the middle of summer, I'm wearing a big top and it's cold, even though there's a heat wave in some other places. It's not that hot here, considering it's now July. And I even have a heater that I bought for my tank, a nano heater, that's just the switch of it there. That's the actual heater, that bar shaped thing goes down into the water. And I need that heater on in the summer as well as the winter, because the temperature can drop a lot at night. And the Neocaridina, they're probably bred in Ireland. Like, this line is probably generations of them living in Ireland, but they don't really like things lower than a certain temperature, and it consistently goes lower than about 20 degrees Celsius here, so which is somewhere in the 70s Fahrenheit. So typically they like it a little bit warmer than it tends to be in Ireland. So you know, that's another expense. It can be a little bit more on your lecky bill, you know. If you got expensive lecky, you need to think about that, because you're running an air pump, and you're maybe running, depending on the temperatures and what your type of shrimp need, you're running a heater as well. And that is a little nano heater that I bought, a Chinese made aquarium heater, and for nano size. I was very pleased to find one that size. I also had to buy a very fancy plug board, because anybody running an aquarium ends up with a plug board with 101 different things plugged in, maybe lighting plugged in. Here's kind of the cheapest type of light that I got for the side of the aquarium, which turned out to be very, very bright, and I didn't like it. So I ended up doing a hack where I buy vegetables in a blue plastic kind of thing, and I put some of the blue plastic on under the light, and it softens the light down, because I wanted my tank to be a not very bright one as part of the look, because I wanted those yellow shrimp to look super dramatic against this dark black kind of background with, you know, my big brown mountain in it, a reddy brown mountain, and a few reddy plants, a few greeny plants, and just a nice atmosphere of having to kind of look in, and it's kind of a mysterious looking, not brightly lit thing, you see. But I have a big grow light over it as well. So I bought a big cable, and that's a plug-in as well. So the plug board was an expensive plug board, but it has USB plugs on it as well as your ordinary plugs, which were great because a lot of the things I was buying are USB things. That heater is, I think it was a USB connection on it, or maybe it's a plug-in, I don't know. But some of the things like lighting and everything have USB connections on them. And that's great in terms of if you have a power cut, say, and you had, I don't know, an air pump that runs off USB, you can have backup power going into your aquarium just with a power bank. Just get a power bank, you know. But some people buy battery charged backup power units as well, because if you've got stuff in an aquarium and your heater goes off or your air goes off for a long time, that might be something you have to think about. Well, what do I do if that happens, if you're somebody that gets a lot of power cuts, you see? So you have to think about that as well. That's another thing. I had no idea this getting a tank ready for shrimp would be quite a stressful thing. But I found myself doing water testing every day. That's another thing you have to do. And if I can find this, this was right from the point at which I had plants in and I had my heater and my filter organized. Now, another thing before I move on from talking about the filter and talk about water parameters is something you need in the water that's very important. The reason a lot of people choose sponge filters for their shrimp tanks, because there are different types of filters. There's hang-on back filters and canister filters and things like that. But people like sponge filters because of this sponge material having the wonderful capability that all kinds of nice bacteria that are really good for the whole little ecosystem you're going to have running in your tank are propagated via the sponge, because the bacteria in a pond, and I actually kick-started my aquarium from an outside pond. You need to get two particular types of bacteria propagating in your water, basically, to have a really healthy little ecosystem in there. The plants are the other thing that's going to do it for you. And of course, the water as well, which is the medium for the shrimp to swim around in, you know. But you need the bacteria. And the bacteria, a lot of people do this, they get bacteria from other aquarists. I had a pond in my back garden that I was bringing up tadpoles in, up to the stage of being frogs. So I had a pond filter out there with a sponge on it, which I brought in and imported into the tank, and had that originally on the little small filter that I had. But when I replaced the new filter, I made sure I kept the old filter material in the tank as well, so that those two types of bacteria would get a chance to grow. And the bacteria are beneficial for the thing called cycling, right? So cycling is the great mystery. Sorry, I spat because I was so overexcited about the whole thing. It's the great mystery for aquarists when you're new, right? And getting the nitrogen cycle established in your tank is something that takes a few weeks to do, and it's why most people will hold off before they put in anything into their tank. You can do it. You can do a fish in cycle or a fishless cycle. So some people put in things and do the cycling when they have stuff in there. I preferred to do it without having my shrimp in, have the tank ready, and then put the shrimp in, was the way I went about it. And I went about it, and the first step was by getting some of those bacteria to put in. Now, you can buy those bacteria in. I have a very varied little thing of various bottles of things here. None of them are about bacteria bottles, but you can buy bacteria, beneficial bacteria, to put into your aquarium to start that process. But that is going to be the start of your cycling process, which is like, I compared it earlier to a seasoned wok to cook in. You can't cook a nice meal until your wok is seasoned, and we're not going to eat shrimp, but we are going to cycle a tank, you see, before we do anything to maximize success. So I had a notebook, and I had this, a testing kit, and I liked this one because it was one of the simpler styles of testing, which you had these test strips inside. It comes in a nice plastic box, and you have 150 strips, I think, were in this kit. I'm still using it. But in the front, it has a picture of all the different panels that you see on your strip. And you put your strip into the water, test it daily during the cycling process, and compare it to the colors on this chart. And the colors are telling you what levels you have of different things in your water. So this is a 9-in-1 test. And what it tests for are the levels of copper, nitrate, nitrite, chlorine, hardness, which is also known as GH. And GH is very important to monitor in your aquarium. And total alkalinity, and KH, carbonate levels, also very important to monitor. I will show you a video in a minute about the importance of that. And pH, also very important. And ammonia levels, also very important. So all very important things. These are the parameters of your water that you have to test. And I ran those tests every day for 4 weeks. And the test strips have all the color changes on them afterwards, so it becomes meaningless afterwards. But I took notes on what the levels of all those different things were on every day, because over a period of 3 to 4 weeks, what you're looking for is for ammonia, which is kind of waste in the water from fish or shrimp producing waste, anything in the water producing waste. Like in our own human pee, we've got ammonia, haven't we? So it's waste material, organic waste material. But ammonia can build up in water and can poison things if it gets too high, right? So you have to have a way of filtering it out, and your filter doesn't actually filter it out properly without there being a cycling process going on as well, is the idea. And the cycling process is getting that nitrogen cycle established, and the nitrogen cycling has to do with ammonia, first of all, getting worked on by one of the types of bacteria in your tank and turned into nitrite, which is slightly less toxic than ammonia. And then the other type of bacteria comes along and utilizes that nitrite and turns that into even less toxic nitrate. So when you see, first of all, nitrite appearing in your tank, that's good. Through the water testing, you'll see it turning up on your daily tests. Then you start to see nitrate. You know you have your second type of bacteria in the tank, and you're over the moon, because you know then that what will happen is that the ammonia, the spike of ammonia that you had from basically feeding your tank ammonia in terms of food, because you literally feed shrimp food into the tank in order to create ammonia to get an ammonia spike. And then the bacteria, as they're developing, they utilize the ammonia, turn it into nitrite and nitrate, and then the level of ammonia starts coming down and the level of nitrate goes up. And when you have nitrite and ammonia at naught on your tests, is how you know your tank has cycled, right? And it doesn't involve a bicycle on shrimps on bicycles at all, or bladder snails on bicycles. And it's quite fun. And doing that kind of testing, there's a certain sort of mind that enjoys this. And I did enjoy it, I have to say. It was all very scientific and interesting. And I'm going to show you another scientific video because the other testing thing you do is on your rocks. And I had a red sandstone, and iron is one of the things that you have to be really careful of introducing to your aquarium. Iron and copper and lead and things like that can be very toxic in a tank. And sometimes in stones, some stones release substances. And for example, limestones can release substances that are substances that affect the KH, the carbonate levels in your tank, which is all stuff that affects pH, which is really important as well. So GH, general hardness, which is like if somebody says you live in a hard water area, that's what we're talking about, hardness of water. Hardness of water is you're trying to replicate the conditions that those shrimp like to live in before you introduce them, right? So some of them like softer water parameters, some of them like harder water parameters. So if you have water in the tank, you want to know what that water is like for testing purposes as well. So you test whether you're using rainwater or reverse osmosis water or tap water. You're testing that water because that's the water that's going to go into your tank. So when you're testing that water, you want to find out what hardness the water is. And the hardness, the general hardness of the water will also tell you something about whether it's got minerals in it or not. And I don't live in a hard water area. I live in an area where the water hardness is the same as rainwater. I was amazed at this. And when I found this out, how soft my water was, I am now remineralizing myself because I realized I put in more energy into putting minerals into my shrimp water than I did putting it into my human body, which can really do with some minerals as well. So I've now bought things like, magnesium tablets for myself because my water was at naught levels on these things. But it's even too soft for the shrimp. So I had to do things. And some of the things that I'm going to show you after this video are things I put into the water to introduce minerals into the water, which as you introduce them also affect your water hardness. Because harder water is mineralized water. Rainwater typically doesn't have those things in it. Unless if you buy spring water, it's been running over limestone rock, filtered through limestone rock. Some of those things will have some minerals in them because the rocks and everything are adding minerals. And that's the idea that I want to show you in this video coming up. It's me testing rocks to see if they're going to leach too many minerals into the water and drive up the general hardness too much for that tiny little tank. When you have a tiny tank, you've got a bit of a challenge keeping the parameters stable in a tank. So you want to know as much as you can in terms of testing everything that's going into the tank. So this is a vinegar test that I ran on some limestone rock, and an iron test that I ran. I did iron tests on my red sandstone as well. And the iron test was a test strip, but the test for leaching from limestone rock of minerals that would affect the hardness of the water is a test that you do with vinegar. Funny enough, with white vinegar, which is an acid, isn't it? So you're pouring an acid on something to test it. It's very interesting. And this was a fun test. So here's measuring iron first, but maybe we'll watch Is It Limestone first. So the vinegar fizz test is what this one is called, and I wasn't sure with these limestone, so I got to learn a bit about geology as well while I was at it, because sometimes rock identification can be tricky because they can be made of a few things. So there's quite a lot of fizzing going on there. That's a jar of white vinegar, and when you see that, you know something is limestone, because calcium carbonate reacts with the acid of the vinegar. There's my shrimp cave. Now, there's my filter actually. So you can watch those videos in your own time. But so that was a good one. Here's the iron test. So it's a test strip again. And there you can see the stones are in there at this stage. So that was a test I did after a week of the red sandstone being in, to see if the red in it was iron, which, you know, I knew it was probably iron, but was it leaching into the water? Because I didn't want iron in the water, and the levels were fine. And every once in a while, I do an iron test still. I had to buy that as a separate test, but it's not. The leaching from some of these things are so slow as to be insignificant. So all those things put your mind at rest, you see. So that's good to have your mind at ease, because you're not sitting around wondering, oh, am I going to kill these poor shrimp? Are they going to be okay? It's so stressful compared to having even ants or isopods or something like that. It's just up a level in stress, because you're trying to put them in an environment that is harder to replicate their natural environment, because I haven't gotten them locally. You see, they should be off living in Asia somewhere, and I just don't have those conditions, the same conditions. I have them living somewhere completely different. So I'm trying to make life easy for them, haven't I? So the water was very important. So the cycling process all finished and everything, but you've got to then get the shrimp and more supplies for them. So it's all flipping money at this stage. But after you've got all these parameters right, you see, which you do by, if I can find this, you do by doing things like this. There are lots of different brands in these. One of the things is little chemical that you put a couple of drops in to take the chlorine out of water. It makes tap water safe, because I went with tap water in the end rather than rainwater, because I realized I have a water barrel, but I won't have a water barrel all year round. There can be little organisms in the rain barrel that I might not want in my tank that aren't in tap water, and the tap water isn't mineralized any more than the rainwater is. So I was going to have to add minerals anyway, wasn't I? So somebody recommended mineral salts to me recently. I had been doing things like putting in crushed oyster shells, But I said, yeah, that makes sense because I have no minerals in the water at all other than what I'm manually putting in. Be nice to have mineral salts to put in. So these are mineral salts that are specifically for shrimp, and that is a good idea because they have calcium and magnesium, which are the main minerals that you're going to need in the correct proportion to each other, in the correct ratio, let's say. They need a particular ratio. So that'd be a sort of a weekly, it's only a pinch for the size tank I have. It's a little weekly kind of dose. But that little 9-in-1 test that I have, I run that test. At the moment, I've dropped down to only running it once a week. Just to check those levels are okay, and that'll check for minerals as well. It doesn't check calcium and magnesium separately, but it does at least check through checking water hardness that they're in there, So if you detect one and you're adding your mineral salts that are especially for shrimp, you're going to be getting both. Other things that I use, products that I use are this one is very important, and I made a big mistake in this. You make mistakes sometimes, but if you know enough, if you have enough knowledge to fix your mistakes, you're a lucky person. pH plus is something I need to use because the pH of my water was not. I think it was something like not. It was something ridiculously soft, right? And I needed to get the water for those yellow shrimp to soft-ish to hard-ish. So somewhere around the neutral mark, which is 7 on the scale of neutrality, if you like. All my measurements in my test kits and everything go by ppm. Some of the tests go by D degrees anyway, whatever, so you might get a bit confused by that, but there are converters online. If somebody's taught about ppm and you don't know what they're talking about, you can convert things. But that's what I got used to because that test is in parts per million basically. So that pH plus, when I add it to my water, it brings up the general hardness of the water and the pH. And I did the big mistake I made the other week. I had decanted some of this because this spills like mad. And actually, when I received it, they have a habit of opening absolutely everything I get as if they think I'm some kind of a huge drug dealer or something. And they never put the lids back properly on anything. So I lost about a third of the volume of this, but it does tend to leak a bit anyway. So I put it in a little dropper bottle because all my amounts that I put into the tiny tank are tiny. I have a kind of a lifetime supply of everything. That's the advantage of a small tank. And I had this and a plant fertilizer in a very similar looking bottle. And last week I put that Aqua Plus stuff in instead of what I meant to put in, which is a plant fertilizer. And I realized immediately, I've sorted it out now, I've changed the label on one of the things to make it look different. But I had to swoop in because my pH of the water and GH, two parameters which are very important, we're going to zoom upwards. And I had 2 shrimp in the tank at that stage, and I was panicking. And I was saying, oh my God, what'll I do? So water change is usually a thing that you do anyway. You do 20% water changes on your tank fairly regularly, like every few weeks. Or for me, I'm more likely with so few shrimp in it and so few snails at the moment, fingers crossed it doesn't get worse, that I really need to do just top ups most of the time. But for this one, I had to do a few 20, I ended up doing a 25% water change to get it right because I did a few water changes before I managed to get it back to what it should have been by doing some siphoning out. There's another piece of kit you need. You end up getting a lot of kind of measuring bowls, and this thicker line here is, for siphoning from your aquarium. And you'd have like a bucket or something at a lower level than the aquarium. You started off by sucking on this, and then once you have water coming up into the tube, you then hold the tube down from one end immersed in your aquarium and the other end down lower in your bucket or whatever container. Siphon off as much water as you need to siphon off. If there are shrimp in there, that end is going to be covered up. I have little organza bags I tie on the end of it, so they don't get sucked up. And you suck out the amount of water that you're going to change, and then you put in fresh water. And I put in fresh water that did not have the pH plus stuff in it, so that I'm bringing down the pH levels again to what they were before, you see. And I've got my water safe in there and everything, so that I'm not putting like just plain old chlorinated tap water in there. So you get used to doing the siphoning business and everything before you have your shrimp in. So it's like you've got practice runs for everything. You've got a chance to get your parameters stable before the shrimp go in. Then you get to, I found that bit the fun bit, to be honest with you. Putting all the plants in and everything, because I love that. And actually today is plant fertilization day, and what I do is the other snafu bottle, the plant fertilizer bottle, I put a couple of drops of this in the water today, because I fertilize the plants in the aquarium once a week. Because although they like growing underwater, they need a little bit extra help with a special fertilizer as well. So you don't just put any fertilizer on. You put, this one is an Easy Life Nitro, but it has all the right things in it, but not the bad things that could kill shrimp, you see. There's a couple of things that they don't like in the water, like copper and things like that. Or, I don't know, ammonia or something, So it's an aquarium safe kind of fertilizer. So, and I will spray that on my orchid as well, which is absolutely loving life on its little branch. It's tied on with sphagnum moss, and I'm quite hopeful I might get flowers out of that at some stage. So you've got all that in place, and that's all happening, and then you're more confident when you have the shrimp in that you can keep your parameters stable, you see. So then hopefully you've got some nice food for them and you can start having fun with shrimp, not just with your plantscape, you see. So and I did have those bladder snail to keep me company while I was waiting for the shrimp for it to be ready for shrimp. And it was boosting my confidence that the bladder snails were surviving, but they're incredibly hardy, and just try and stop them multiplying as well. That's going to be fun additions to my plans for that when I do shorts on how I'm dealing with the population explosion of bladder snails. So don't say that you weren't warned. That, unless you make sure that your plants are very clean, and that you rinse the original water with some aquarium safe water before you put them in. You might be bringing in a stowaway crew, and they're great cleanup, but it's just the plan for what you're going to do with the overflow of them, you see. Then you have to put your thinking cap on. So here's all the nice food that I got from them, and I'm not going mad on showing you all the different brands and everything, because it depends on where you are. A lot of these are from Poland. I showed you the Artemia snacks for them, which are actually sea monkeys. I'm feeding them sea monkeys. But their favorite thing at the moment, and I have decided it's kind of their main food, is these vital snacks, also made in Poland. So you'd be looking at getting a complete food for your shrimps, but you're also looking at getting nice little treats for them, because the trick with them seems to be, according to everybody, having a well-rounded kind of diet, so that they're not going to be missing any minerals. And I'd really like to pay attention to that, because my original water that I had wasn't chock-a-block with minerals. So I want to make sure that they're not missing out on anything important. So like I have the complete food, which has a bit of everything. But every kind of second or third day, I might give them something different. Like I have this protein one, and these are all pellets that sink. And I put them in, you can buy little shrimp feeder dishes to keep all the food from getting too all over in the substrate and getting too much of a detritus worm outbreak. Then they can take over the tank as well if you have lots of old food degrading in the tank. But I have a freebie, because I have a little tiny baby oyster shell in the tank. And I'm always looking to keep my GH up in the tank anyway, and mineralize the tank and everything. And oyster shells are great for that. I have a little packet in the back of the tank of ground up oyster shells, which I collected myself and ground up myself. Um, but it makes a really nice little shrimp dish that I put in as well. And I feed them in that, leave it in for a few hours a day, and take it out again. And the detritus worms can't have too much of a party on that. And it keeps the pristine look of my tank as well. But the pellets, because they're sinkable pellets, they'll sit down in that. The only thing that doesn't sink um, is bloodworms. I got the bloodworms because everybody always says, oh, they go great for bloodworms. They love them. But even when they're saturated, they don't seem to sink. And I end up giving the snails a rather expensive meal out of it, which, snails need it and everything, because they've got shells too. But it's a bit of a waste for the shrimps because it doesn't sink, and I can't get fresh. So other things, algae, there's going to be some algae in your tank, but little algae treats every once in a while. I have these Caridina nano sticks, and I have weird stuff like, I can't remember what was in walnuts, the walnut pellets that I liked, but when you go on to sites that sell you the shrimp, and they're aquarium specialists, they'll have all the food there and everything, and they'll list what the ingredients of the food are and what ingredients are good for what. And some things encourage healthy molting, some things have enzymes in them, some have loads of vegetables, some, like this one, are for they've got stuff in it which encourages good coloration in your shrimps. So this is a multi-component supplementary food. Protein, astaxanthin, which I think is the main ingredient of the yellow color in the Neocaridina yellow line shrimp. B-glucans, enzymes, all kinds of things, you see. So all the different snacks are, in combination, you're covering your bases about what they're getting. And then you can have fun doing things like, I've got loads of nettles in the garden, and they love nettles. So they love nettles and dandelions, and you can blanch foods like that. This is assuming you don't use any poisons in your garden at all. My garden's all natural, so I'm covered for this. So the other night, for example, I blanched a couple of dandelion leaves, and you just put them in boiling rain barrel water. I use, because I didn't use chlorinated water for that either, and soaked them in that for about 4 minutes to soften up the cell wall structure, as if the food has kind of started to break down, to make it digestible for them. And then you put that in, and they'll nibble on it. Those I leave in for a day. I don't take them out after a day, because they don't mind if they break down a little bit. I have a nice video there, actually, I'll show to you, of my little fella eating a leaf. And that's a leaf of, it's actually a house plant I had in there, a purple spider plant. And that's him eating, that's one of them eating their normal dinner. The other one has opted for, that's the female, because you can see her saddle there. And she's opted for this tasty purple spider plant and is breaking it down like nobody's business really fast because it had started melting in the tank. Sometimes you get a plant melt, and that isn't an underwater plant anyway. That one, that's a surface plant really, but one of the leaves had dipped under the water. So she's eating that. So they like them when they start breaking down. But of course, if you let stuff break down too much, you're looking at too much ammonia in your tank again, possibly, you see. So that's why you get stuff like, I'll just stop that. That's why you get stuff like this for your tank, a turkey baster. There are, for bigger aquariums, you can get like hoovers that are basically big siphon things. But if you buy a turkey baster, you can just, if you've got bits in the bottom of your substrate that are just hanging around, you can just poof, or um, just push it in and then put it in the water and go like that, and it'll suck up the little thing, and then you quickly grab it up and take out your little bit of food or whatever is getting stuck. And then you will end up with tools like these kind of things, which I had already for, actually, when I put this in, I put the little shell feeder thing that I'm using as a shrimp food dish. I put it in with this every day and take it out. And sometimes one of the shrimp likes hopping up on it all cheeky because he knows it means food. And he goes, "Oh, goody, you're a friendly thing. You're feeding me," and hops up on this. And I have to be really careful that I don't take him out of the tank with it when I'm feeding him. So you'll end up with those. I had those already from doing little terrarium scapes, basically, and messing about with ants and everything, and sponges and things like that. So there's a lot of equipment, a lot of food, um, a lot of planning, um, a lot of stress goes with it as well, funny enough, a lot of expense, but a lot of fun to be had with it as well, and a lot of learning. So hopefully, unless there was some horrible disaster with my sound or something, you'll have gotten something out of that live stream. And definitely, if anybody was thinking about getting an aquarium, it would mean that you're not going into it too fast without thinking about, uh, well, do I really want to do this? Or am I the sort of person that would enjoy that hobby? Or is it too much of a setup and hassle? Once you have it set up, it's not that big a hassle, really, unless something goes wrong, like power cuts or something like that, or water parameters changing from you not keeping the tank clean enough or something like that. It's the setup that takes the care and attention, basically, I think, and the rest is easier from there on in. So it should get less stressful for me going on from here, but it's certainly not as easy as doing terrariums or anything like that. There's so much more to it, but it's so interesting, and it's such an interesting thing to learn about. So I'm hoping that me doing my very, it wasn't brief, but um my very kind of broad introduction to the topic of kind of all the things you need to know about keeping an aquarium for shrimp or anything, really. It's just, I'm saying shrimp because it's a nano aquarium that's really on the smallest edge of how big an aquarium should be. The amount of water that fits in mine is liters. It's only a 7.1 or something liter tank, which is just over 2 gallons. And some shrimp keeping aquarists say don't get anything under 10 gallons for shrimp. But I have definitely seen people with little fish bowls that down to 2 gallons that are keeping a couple of shrimp very happily in. But as I say, you do have to think to yourself, no, shrimp breed, and they, if you read about them, they breed easily. So that's something that you do want to know and plan for. Are you going to have other little fish bowls around the place? If so, do I live in a cold area? Is that going to mean more heaters? Or am I am probably going to, if I um if these shrimp breed, which they probably have at this stage, to be honest. They were doing the mating dance and everything the other day, and both of them have calmed down from that. So once they calm down, it usually means they've done it, apparently. So we'll see what happens. But I've had to make plans already. Like, what am I going to do if I end up with 20 little shrimp in this tiny little tank? I'm going to have to think an overflow plan, haven't I? So another tank could mean more heating, unless I want to try a tank that is a semi Wallstead kind of method, natural tank. But I'm still going to have to get a heater, even if I don't get um, an air pump for it. And I'm just relying on heavy planting to give me enough oxygen exchange it happening in the tank, because plants can do that for you as well. So it would be slightly experimental, and I haven't done that before, obviously, so it's a high risk thing. But you either do that, or you're into another air pump, uh, another heater, which I would have to get another heater anyway, another one of those little small heaters. I would have to get for the winter anyway. But I might try a planted tank that doesn't have an air pump in it, and see if I can do it without the air pump. Um, with plants, because I have experience now of growing plants on heavily planted um, aquascaped things, and I like aquascaping. So, I would have some of the equipment for that if I bought either a um, fish bowl, a big fish bowl, or the other thing, which would go in the same area quite well, because it's near that plug board and everything, beside the other aquarium, a big vase, and use a vase as an aquarium for the overflow shrimp, because I'm not online trading shrimp with anybody or anything like that. I'm not that outgoing that I want to make friends with people and give them phone numbers and all this. In Ireland, you can only trade within your own country. So do think about that kind of thing. You have to have long-term plans in place as well. But you know what? It is fun and delightful. It's like any other hobby. It's about learning, but they're live animals. So you have a responsibility to treat them properly, you see. And you can do things like, you know, have loads of baby shrimp and then have a tank that has assassin snails in it. But you have to be okay with yourself if you're introducing a predator in, that will eat the shrimp, that you can sit and watch that happening and not feel terrible about yourself and say, oh, but this is nature and this is how the natural world works. Yeah, but do I want to see it up close and personal? Probably not, So there's a lot of kind of weird decisions you're going to have to make about your shrimp, and if they're breeding and things like that. So maybe they're the right little thing for you, maybe they're not. I don't know. Or you might want to just try a planted aquariums that just have snails in them or something like that, ones that don't breed as fast, or have something that isn't so big that it becomes something that's going to go out of control. And of course, something that size, you can't have fish in it at all because they're just too small. So you can't have, even though they show them online, they show tiny little bowls and things with fish in them. I would absolutely love to have neon tetras. I think neon tetras are beautiful, but I don't have a big enough aquarium, so it's not going to happen. It's not right to have little things not having enough space to move around in. And I have the responsibility. I have to make space for any new ones if they breed, you see, or have a plan for, like, am I going to use them for food, for something else that's going to be my main creature in a tank, and that is going to be, if there are loaches or something that eat shrimp, am I going to be okay with watching live things being eaten? I know when I see other people's videos, I don't really enjoy that. So I'll have to see how it goes. I think to a certain extent, they might limit their breeding to the size of whatever they're in. But I think that just thinking it's going to happen by magic is pie in the sky, and that I would want to read more into that before it happens. So I have a really good plan. But my plan at the moment is that, well, I do have a bit of room I could make for a few extra containers, but I just can't manage huge expansion of numbers in shrimp and snails. You see, the plan for the snails is bring them in the winter and have an indoors pond area for them in a utility room, so they don't freeze to death in the winter. I mean, I could be cruel and just freeze them to death and get rid of the overflow problem like that, but we'll see how serious things get. I don't want to be actually actively killing things. I know nature does that anyway, but it's not fair to bring in things that are used to higher temperatures and then just let them die through cold, is it? It's not that fair. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll see how I get on. Okay, and I hope I didn't kind of put you off, but I want you to go in equipped and knowing what to expect if you were thinking, oh, that sounds like a kind of an interesting hobby. It is. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating hobby, I must say, and it's very interesting for me. But it does come with a few little headaches as well, I have to say. Okay, bye-bye. It was a very long live stream, but I did manage to fit in a lot, so there you go.